Smile.
It's on you.
Ready? Here
Ready.
we go.
Look at this. This is my contribution. We're good, Jimmy.
Okay, I have to wait till you finish goofing off.
Oh God.
Welcome to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. You just came back from some traveling, and I was expecting you to be sarcastic when you came in, and you delivered.
Well, I try to be a little lighter after vacation because
Right.
what we do is so intense.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about the 5 common car accident injuries. I know you're excited about that, as I was excited to try to get that out of my mouth to say that. Where do you want to start? Because this is what you do for a living.
I'm Scott Elliot Smith, and I practice law. I represent people who are injured in collisions, cars, trucks, motorcycles. And I deal with this every day and have for 35 years. The objective that I have as an attorney for these individuals is to maximize their recovery from the at-fault party. So what we have to do is figure out what happened. First thing, if someone's in a car collision, you meet with the person and you find out what happened. So most car collisions are little fender benders, and they don't normally cause injuries, or if they do, it's injuries that are what they call soft tissue in nature, muscles, ligaments, tendons. But soft tissue injuries can be very serious as well. Disc in your neck, disc herniation, disc bulge, and may require surgery or lots of treatment related up into surgery. So how does an injury happen in a car collision? I think that's where we're going, right? Let's take an example that is near and dear to your heart, because, Michael, you've been in car collisions before. And one of the more common car collisions is being struck from behind. Now, you can be struck from behind and not even cause any property damage to that car or to your car and still injure that person. You can be in a car collision where you're hit from behind and your car's totaled and their car's totaled and you walk away unscathed. Well, why does that happen? Do you know?
I actually don't know that. Well, I just know from personal experience, how it was explained to me, was the car didn't sustain the damage, but the inertia of the vehicle striking me in the back, that's what caused my injuries. The car didn't crumple up, but basically that force generated is what caused my spine to be out of alignment.
That's excellent answer. What we're talking about is energy here. It depends on how hard you're hit, what you're hit by, where it's hit on your car, and the energy that is transferred from the impact from behind through your car up into your body. And that is really the long and short of how you're injured. So it doesn't matter how much property damage there is. Of course, in a more tragic collision where cars are totaled and they're high-speed impacts, more likely than not, you're going to have more severe injuries or death than in a little fender bender. But they can happen.
Are those two different pieces of a case? The property damage versus the physical?
Absolutely.
So, because again, there are a lot of people that we've discussed this. Like in my issues, it was I walked away from, but I didn't realize the effects down the line to my body and then spine and all that. Is that how you view it? Is there's two different pieces to it?
Well, there's so many moving parts in determining how to handle a case. That is two of the pieces. Property damage is something you always want to preserve. A lot of people get in collisions and think they're going to be okay. They're not going to hire an attorney. They think they're going to heal, and they may. But a lot of times you don't. So what happens is they resolve the property damage. They don't take pictures. And then the insurance company is the first one out of the chute to say, wasn't bad of an impact. You weren't hurt. You're faking it. You're a malingerer. And we're not paying you. Prove that you were hurt. Well, one thing I like to use is in my proof to start is the property damage. So you're looking for the invoices, you're looking for pictures. Insurance companies are notorious for not taking pictures when their insured causes the collision and there's bad property damage to their insured's vehicle. Somehow they seem to forget to take that evidence and preserve it because they know down the road it'll come back and bite them. Because that's the same evidence that will be used against them when they argue, oh no, wasn't hurt that bad, didn't seek treatment at the scene, things of that nature. So property damages is one of the first things we look at. First thing we do is let's see what the property damage was. How was the impact? What was the speed of the impact? Where was the impact with the car that hit you? Where was the impact with the car that was struck?
But you're saying that's what you do as an attorney. It's not trusting just the police report or just the insurance.
Oh, absolutely
report.
not. Police reports are wrong a lot of times. EMS squads that come are wrong a lot of times. It's not purposely wrong. They just make mistakes. So under those circumstances, you have to make a determination whether you need an accident reconstructionist who can then figure out things like delta V. I'm sure people that are listening today don't know what that is. You can look it up. But it's about energy transfer. And you talk about what the impact is. And you see what kind of energy went from the vehicle into your body. One of the injuries that are common to car collisions, Michael, are neck injuries, especially ones where you're hit from behind and you are jolted. So let me ask you this. If you're hit from behind, which way does your body go?
Well, hit from behind, when it happened to me, I can only speak to my example, is my head went back. It doesn't go forward because the energy transference it's pushing your vehicle forward with an impact, but your head rocks backwards.
You have done your homework, sir.
Only because I've been in so many accidents. So other than that, I would have actually had to Google
Well,
it.
you get a gold star because that's exactly what happens. When you're hit from behind, your head immediately snaps back as your car moves forward because the energy transferred through your car into the seat, into your body. While the car's moving forward, you're moving backward, and they make contact. So your head probably bounced off your headrest. Most people who are involved in collisions that are hit from behind, I ask them, what parts of your body hit what parts of the car? They'll say, well, I don't think so. I was sitting in my seat. I don't think anything. Well, nobody's strong enough to withstand an impact from behind where their head is not
like in a
bounce
Hans
off
device, like in NASCAR where your head doesn't move.
Well, and it bounces off your headrest, and it does it so fast and so quickly that you don't even notice it half the time. But your head did hit there. And people with head injuries, concussions, and greater have that type of injury. Sometimes they'll hit the steering wheel if you're close enough, if your seatbelt doesn't take. But most of the time you're going to hit the headrest if you're hit from behind. So that's where the injuries start. Your head's like about a 10-pound weight on a little skinny pencil neck.
Dimes.
That's right, on a little skinny pencil neck. And when it's whipped, think of a ball bearing on the end of a string. I mean, that head snaps, it hits that headrest and bounces forward. Sometimes you're in good condition. Your health is good. You don't have any pre-existing conditions. You're young. You're strong. You may be sore for a couple of days. Your neck suffers injuries based on ligament stretching, muscle tearing, tendons, little small micro tears. They call it whiplash, but it's really coup contra coup. So you're hit from behind, your head snaps back, it hits headrest, it snaps forward, and then it snaps back again. That's a lot for your neck to take. And
it still has to transfer upwards, right? So it's going up towards your brain, which causes the concussion.
Brain. Well, on top of that, your brain. Interesting thing about your brain, as you feel your skull when you wash your hair in the morning, it's a smooth, hard surface. But the interior of your skull is a rough, jagged surface. So when you're hit from behind and your head hits that headrest, your brain inside bounces off the back of your skull and then bounces off the front of your skull. And your head and your brain is no different than your neck. You're going to suffer little micro tears, micro bleeds, or worse, when you're hit like that. Now, maybe you heal. Maybe you don't even notice it. You got a headache for a few days, and everything's fine after that. That happens. Other times, it doesn't happen. People shake it off. They don't know the difference that they just had a head injury. It may be diagnosed in the emergency room with a concussion, which means head injury.
Well, you also get the adrenaline rush from your body reacting. So your body, the survival mode kicks in. So you're going to be more apt to walk away from that accident if you can and think you're fine. But once that wears off, you kind of feel that almost like a hangover type of feel to it.
That's exactly right. I mean, you want to feel good. We were raised, get up, rub a little dirt in it, walk it off, and you'll be all right. So everybody that's in a collision, they want to feel better. They don't want to be hurt. Contrary to what insurance companies want to tell juries is everybody's faking it, malingering, and looking for money. people want to be okay. People don't want to suffer injuries. Why insurance companies preach that is beyond me, but even more astounding is that people believe it. People are just out faking, looking for a free meal. What happens is you get that adrenaline, fight or flight feeling. Everything is escalated when you're hit, when you're struck, and it hides a little bit of your injury. You don't feel the manifestations of an injury right away. So what happens is you tell the emergency squad who comes, I think I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm not hurt.
Yeah, if you're on your 2 feet, you're good.
Yeah. And the squad's not real anxious to take you if you don't look bad. But the squad's not trained other than to see catastrophic injuries and how to treat those. They don't know how to treat concussions. They don't know how to treat head injuries. And they don't. And they just say, okay, they refuse treatment and they drive away. Well, that makes some sense to a degree, but it doesn't make sense in what you should do. A lot of people go home 4 or 5, 6 hours later, maybe the next day, and they go, oh, it's worse now. My neck's really sore. I can't turn it. I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like I got hit by a truck. Well, you just did.
Right.
You got hit by a truck.
Well, and then you have recurring headaches and things like that.
And that's when you go to the doctor. Now, a lot of people go to the emergency room, and maybe you're even transported. Well, the emergency rooms are not really equipped and don't really diagnose well for head injuries. You come in and say, well, maybe I lost consciousness. Maybe my head hurts. Well, they should do more. And a lot of times what they do is a CAT scan. It's a radiograph film study to see if there's any bleeds or structural problems. CAT scans and x-rays don't show injuries to the brain necessarily unless they're large injuries, big bleeds, subdural hematoma, which is bleeding under the cranium. What you have is your brain will swell on some instances. That can cause a headache. That can be a problem. If it's a really bad swelling, they'll cut your head open to allow for your head to swell and treat you so the swelling goes down and they put your head back on, so to speak. So it can be really catastrophic, and it shouldn't be ignored.
When you've dealt with these cases before of the people that have kind of walked away, and you always say you have to document, get every piece of information you can. If they're in the situation where they did walk away from it, and then they're having this repeated issue where they can't sleep, they're nauseous, any of that, how do you kind of reconstruct that as part of the case too? Because you've got to present it to the jury. They can't work, or they have headaches, or they can't walk for very long because they're kind of dizzy. You have to prove that, right? So
Right.
A jury is going to hear that. How do you do that when you're fighting an insurance company that's going to say, oh, they're fine?
Well, you'd have to start from the beginning. I mean, what was the medical condition of my client?
Oh, the before and now.
You come to see me and you're a healthy specimen and you're young and you're strong and no pre-existing problems, no complaints of neck pain, never treated for neck pain, never treated for head injury, things of that nature. You're in a collision, then you come to see me and go, I've got these problems. So you've got to lay out sort of a map for a jury to show that this person, you in this example, were perfectly healthy before this collision. And then after the collision, you had all these symptoms and problems. You went to your doctor, and from that point, the doctors will issue reports and give diagnosis and then determine by opinion that what your problems are that they've diagnosed is related to the collision.
Do you count that as documentation as well? Because you would
Yes.
have somebody's physician, they came in every 6 months or a year or whatever, and here's where they were. So that's another piece
Right.
of documentation that you would have, because you would have your primary care doctors probably had you for 10 to 20
Right.
years.
Right.
So you have a case study of this is where it was, this is where he is now.
Well, that's what insurance companies do. If you have to file a lawsuit, they go on a fishing expedition, and they want your primary care physician's records for the last 10 years prior to the collision so they can look for whatever they think they can hang their hat on to blame your injuries from the collision on something else. And what's the easiest thing they do? And they do it every time, and they do it in front of juries. And sometimes they're effective, is to say, well, look, you're 55 years old, you have degenerative joint disc disease of your neck and back, and that's the reason you have a problem. It's not from the collision. Well, everybody at about age 18 on starts to develop arthritic changes. We age as we grow. It doesn't mean you're symptomatic. Doesn't mean you feel any pain. Just because you have degenerative changes doesn't mean you have an injury. Doesn't mean you have pain. Doesn't mean you can't do what you normally do. So what they have to hang their hat on, well, these x-rays or this CAT scan or this MRI showed you had a neck problem, a pre-existing degenerative condition of your neck. My response to that, and most treating physicians are, so what? You didn't have any pain before then.
Right.
You have pain now. The pain you have now is caused by the collision, regardless of your degenerative changes. That's where my clients get most frustrated. I say to them, insurance companies have offered X dollars to settle your case. Well, that's not very much. I agree with you. It's not very much. Well, what they're saying is you have a degenerative disc disease of your neck. It's pre-existing. Well, that's all well and good. If you have a good treating doctor, they'll go to bat for you. They will tell you that it is related to the collision. And yes, you had degenerative changes, but that's not where your pain's from.
I want to take a break because you said something that I really want to get into, but we need more time. We're going to take a break right now. You're listening to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith. I want to talk about what you just said, frustration. You're frustrated, you don't feel all this stuff, and they want to settle. And I want you to do your Scott thing where you.
I'll let you open us up, or let Jim bring us back, and then you ask the question, and I'll jump in on it.
Juan, can you bring us back,
sir? Probably about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Something like that.
So talk faster, is that what you're doing?
10, 11 more
No,
minutes.
you're doing great, but I really
talk faster. And talk with the goofy accent you were using earlier.
All right, then.
We ready?
Yeah, bring us back.
Welcome back to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
That's my favorite part of the
Isn't he
gig.
good?
It's the best.
God, he's good.
Before the break, we talked about, or you had mentioned something that I want to really hit on, and I don't think you realize you said it. When you're injured in a car collision, not accident, the frustration you feel because you don't feel well. You need a new car. Your life, you want it back in order. You said that insurance companies, when they want to settle the case, settling the case means it's over, right? So they want to get to you as soon as possible. We agree that our customer hit your vehicle. We want to give you a check for that car and end it. That's not the right way to go, right? Because you could have traumatic effects that are lingering beyond that, and it's not just the property piece. Can you talk about that? Because you've got people that are frustrated. They don't feel well. They feel that the monetary issue is going to take care of this thing. And it's not the end-all, be-all.
It depends when the person calls me and comes to see me, what I can do for them. They may come right after the collision. I may meet them in the hospital. I may be meeting a family of someone who was killed in a collision. They're all different scenarios. If we're looking at a car collision and say the person comes to me 3 months after the incident because they're not getting better, because the insurance company is not treating them fairly, which they often don't do, which is that they don't often treat everybody fairly. They tell you what they say you're going to get in your car damage. Here's a check. We'll give you a little bit for your medical bills, and that's it. Well, they know you don't know, and they're trained to tell you what they want to tell you so you take less. And hopefully they say, look, you hire an attorney, you're going to have to pay an attorney. Here, I'll give you this check right now.
Yeah, that's always the thing that they do throw out. The expense of an attorney, we can settle this now. But now knowing this, when I heard settle, I didn't realize that's everything. That's the end of the story. You're just getting a new car or the value they say your car is worth. So there's not a whole lot of negotiating. But they want it to end because they have
They want to minimize your recovery.
But they have shareholders, right? So
That's
there is a profit margin built into everybody that buys an insurance policy, which is mandated. So you're kind of stuck. If you hire an attorney, that person, we discussed this 2 weeks ago, there are 3 different ways to go about fees, but if you need help and you're frustrated, you don't want to end it quickly just because somebody offered you one check.
Absolutely. I tell everybody who's been involved in a collision about settling, you need to wait at least a few months after you've been released from your doctor, maybe 6 months, to determine whether or not you're back to pre-collision condition. And if you're not, then it may establish what we call maximum medical improvement, which means you've been hurt, they've treated you the best they can, you've gotten back to the condition you're going to be in. It's not the same as it was before the collision. That's the best you're ever going to be. That I can help determine and evaluate cost. But you want to do everything slowly as it relates to injuries. 2 parts to a collision. The property damage we talked about earlier, you can resolve that. You know you're entitled to fair market value, and we've had this discussion before. We don't have time today, but you're entitled to loss of use, fair market value in your car, or if it's repaired to a diminution in value if your car is fixed, because if you go to sell it, your car has diminished in value, and they'll say, well, I would have given you $10,000 for your car, but it's been in a wreck, so we're going to give you $9,000. Well, that's $1,000 that you are entitled to from the insurance company. Anytime you talk to an insurance adjuster, question them. They're not looking out for your best interest. You may go, well, my insurance agent's great. I love my insurance agent. That has nothing to do with it. Insurance agents don't adjust your case. There's a line of workers called insurance adjusters that do nothing but get trained and minimize your recovery if they can. That's what they do.
But what I find interesting is when you look at the television spots, there's a two-car accident, you never see the other person. But your agent shows up, and they're going to give you a check to get you right back on the road, which is actually the first true thing about insurance that I've ever seen. They will get you that check. But then it's over because there's nobody that's holding their neck or being wheeled off. It's your vehicle, your property is damaged. We came with a check.
Yeah, you don't settle right away. You can settle for property damage, but not your bodily injury. You can separate the two if you can do the property damage on your own. But you want to preserve the car damage by pictures, by photographs, and if necessary, consult a lawyer. I mean, right away. At least find out what you need to preserve.
So I don't make us a liar about this. We said there were 5 points of this. Skull fracture is the third one, but it's kind of goes along with it's the third tier basically. You'd have concussion, bruising, swelling, or bleeding of the brain. Then skull fracture is a whole other ballgame, right?
They can all come together at the same time. You have skull fracture with a subdural hematoma I talked about, which is bleeding of the brain. You can have, and what that leads to, Michael, what's most important about subtle, what they call mild traumatic brain injury cases, they're hard to see. You may have a brain injury and we not even know it, and you go home and you talk to, say, your daughter or your significant other, and they go, well, Michael's been a lot more irritable since the collision. He's forgetting stuff. He can't find his keys. Forgot our parents' phone number, things of that nature. And they just think, well, that's just Michael, he's preoccupied. But that could be signs of a head injury that need addressed. And if you don't address them, they're not going to get better like any other injury.
Typically, in car accidents, and we talk about this all the time, there are a lot of brain or spinal injuries. But as far as like a penetrating injury, and we don't have to go, you know what that means, a penetrating injury, that is a lot easier to prove in court, right? You didn't have a wound.
The structural damage is easy. If you're bleeding and your brain's, if your skull has been fractured and it shows up on that X-ray, then you're looking at an easy way to prove the injury. Then the insurance company wants to argue that, oh, you've gotten better. Or
well, that's what I was going to ask you. If you have a penetrating injury, can they say, well, it's not that bad? Do you know what I mean?
Well, they always try to minimize whatever it is you claim. They'll minimize that it was their insured's at fault. They'll minimize how the impact was. It was low energy. They'll say you have a pre-existing condition. They'll say that you've gotten better, even though we've got a skull fracture, like you called it, a penetrating injury, where something actually penetrated your brain, a part of the car, and it's noticeable and it's obvious.
Yeah, you were walking too close to the dock and you got harpooned because you wanted to.
Well, they'll say all kinds of things, and then they'll say, okay, well, the doctors treated you and you got better and you're better now. And the reason you're not better now is not because of that injury, it's because of a pre-existing condition. They play the same game in every case. And the unfortunate part is we don't get to sue insurance companies of the at-fault drivers. We should be able to sue them. Instead, we have to sue the person who was driving. So in front of a jury, you think a person who's brought the claim is suing poor little old lady who caused it? No. It's really the insurance company who's hiding behind their insured to make it look like it's the poor little old lady.
Number. It's this policy number. It's their person, their rank and file serial number. They did it. We had nothing to do with it. We just take the checks and insure them.
Well, if a jury knew the insurance company was behind all the little tricks they play, all the things that they do to try to minimize your recovery, they'd be more upset. So they've been strong enough to support law that says, if I have to sue somebody, I have to sue the person who caused the collision. I can't sue the insurance company who insures that person, who's actually going to run the case and who's going to pay at the end of the day. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfair.
You ever feel bad when you've seen somebody in the courtroom where you know they're at fault and they're just going to fight this thing tooth and nail.
I like that. I mean, if they're juries are smart. Collectively, they're very smart. You're not going to. You might fool a couple people in the jury, but you're not going to fool them collectively. And if they try to pull that kind of thing in front of a jury, most time the juries are going to see through it and not buy it.
Gotcha. Will you do me a favor, because we only have like a minute left? Will you just say the fifth one out loud?
Diffuse axonal injury.
Yeah, I just feel better because we did get all 5 in. If you want to describe that in 30 seconds or less, you can.
I can't, but that's another part of the head injury. You know, you've got synapses in your brain, and they connect so you can think. I mean, the brain, we still haven't figured out. But long story short, if you get a head injury, anything you learned from anything you heard today is go get checked out. Don't let it go. Follow up.
Check your head.
Check your head.
All right. We will see you next week on Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
You've been listening to Get Justice. Thank you very much for listening. Scott Elliot Smith. I can do that again.
Dragnet.
That was a little.
Thank you for listening to Get Justice with Scott Elliot Smith.
I need to say it